Hi there everybody, loading Wi-Fi here, and I'm here to go over another handgun. This would be the Beretta APX, and just for clarification, this is not the A1, this is the original APX, which Beretta does not sell themselves anymore. So anything that you're looking at is going to be used, or what this is, which was not used when I got it, it was a surplus, unfired Brazilian police trade-in. Those are still for sale. You can get them on Aimsurplus for $300. Mine specifically here did not come with anything in the box, just the gun. And it also has, I don't know if you can, you're going to be able to see this very well, these two little dots on the rear sights. The front sight is white. The rear sights have two little, almost like pen dots. And I saw a review from somebody else, and he had the same thing going on. So as you can see, one of them, the left one, is kind of worn down. The other one, I don't know, I guess that's a Brazilian police thing. Also, I have already checked, but just to have it on video here, show clear. And put you back down. I've just balanced on this lamp. But anyway, so yeah, this is the Brazilian police surplus. Now, there are a couple things that are going to be different for this one than the regular original APX. First of all, it has the slightly upgraded recoil spring, which is actually in the APX A1 as well. So it has the APX A1 recoil spring. And also it has up here a loaded chamber indicator. Now, important to note, if you ever want to change out a barrel, you're either going to have to remove the loaded chamber indicator, which I'm told you can just do yourself, or you can get a gunsmith to shave away this front part, because you can see where it kind of goes into the barrel here. Most APXs, and all, I don't know about all, but most APX A1s at least, do not have that loaded chamber indicator, and you cannot get a normal non-loaded chamber indicator barrel into this gun unless you do those modifications. So for example, Beretta sells threaded barrels for the APX and APX A1 on their website. That will not work on this without modification. But you can take it out. So that's not exclusive to the Brazilian police surplus, but the Brazilian police surplus has that, and it's not super common. It also has slightly different import markings. You can't really see on the low quality camera, but there's something here. I don't really care too much about that. If you do, cool collectible, slightly different import markings. But for the most part, it's a totally normal original APX with the new recoil spring and that loaded chamber indicator. So, okay, so now we know what this gun is. What is my experience with this gun? So I've shot probably about 2,000 rounds through it. I don't track my rounds, I'm lazy, sorry. But what I've done specifically is I've done the QSI handgun defense course, whatever the weekend one was, the full weekend. And I used this gun with the light entirely for that. And I also have done 2 competitions, one IVPA match and one at my local range that's kind of USPSA, but I don't think they're actually officially associated with them. In terms of my shooting ability, I'm fine. I'm not great. I'm not bad, I guess. Yeah, so you're not getting the opinion of some sort of expert shooter or shooter's who's had a million rounds through a million different guns, so just keep that in mind through this review. So a couple of other things to note, the accessories and the things that I have done here is, obviously you see the big X300 Ultra on there. I do think that makes it shoot slightly nicer because of the recoil, or because it has the extra weight, which reduces the recoil a little bit. But I have also shot it without that, and it does mostly the same. For holsters, I have this Safariland. They have a million different numbers, but this is the level 1 retention. Outside the waistband, not at all concealed. I use that in the USPSA type. Again, I'm not a super great competitive shooter, so I just got this, even though it's not a competitive type holster that you'd normally use. And I also have a Black Point Tactical outside the waistband holster that I do use for concealed carry. And I have carried this infrequently in that holster in heavier clothing. It's a full-size handgun with an X300 Ultra though, so it's not like, it's something I would want to normally carry as much. That would be the P2000 that I went over last video. So that is what, and random range time. So those two competitions, that defense course and random range time, that's my experience with this gun. I've carried it a little bit. So getting into the gun itself, reliability, first of all, because this is definitely a defensive-oriented handgun. It was what Beretta put in for the U.S. military trials, so presumably you want it to be very reliable. I've had two issues with this, and I would only kind of maybe half associate one or blame one on the gun. And so I'll go through these two specific issues. One, actually both took place in the QSI course. One was when we were kind of holding the gun funny, like we were having our partner aim it for us. And so I was holding like almost like this and firing because my partner was then aiming. So it was really weird. It was an interesting drill actually, because the idea was to see your partner sees if you're like jerking the trigger or flinching or anything. But it had a failure to extract when I was doing that. And I'm about 90% sure that's because I limp wristed it because I was holding it funny, like to the side. So I don't blame that on the gun. The other failure was when we were doing the night shooting part of the class, which that X300 was very helpful for. Obviously not relevant to the gun specifically, but I had a great time night shooting because of that. It had a failure to lock back on empty. And I was running through kind of a quicker drill at the time. And so I was like moving between targets and stuff. And so I didn't actually know this until I wasn't able to fire anymore. And again, it was dark. And because it was like a timed drill, I just dropped the mag and put a new one in. So I couldn't tell you if maybe I was riding the slide release or if I had accidentally done something that way, or if it, honest to God, just didn't lock back because of a problem with the gun. I don't know. But I would kind of potentially associate, blame that not locking back on it. I would not blame the failure to extract. I believe that was me limp wristing it. Otherwise, it has been very reliable through that time. I have kept up cleaning it though. So I know some people will be like, I ran this for a million billion rounds and I didn't even clean or lube it. I like to clean and lube my stuff, so it has been cleaned and lubed every couple hundred rounds at least. So it has had a fairly easy time. I also haven't tried to run any steel through it. It's been entirely 115, 124 range ammo. Okay, so moving on, I would consider this a reliable gun. I would trust my life to it. Controls. Basically just a Glock or other striker-fired gun here. It's very similar to what you're used to. Slide lock, slide release, your mag. It has that bladed trigger safety. Now the one thing is, and I'm not gonna even do this because I can't really do this without some sort of brace. It's really hard to do on this gun. Is you kind of have to push this in and rotate this down, and that's how the slide comes off. And I honestly cannot do it without some sort of momentum. Like I have to brace it on a table or something. Also, this little button here, you can decock the striker without pulling the trigger. I always just pull the trigger, that was whatever. I have to brace it on the table to do that, and it's like I can't really get that on camera. On the other hand, it's not the end of the world. It's slightly more annoying than most of its competitors, but whatever, who really cares? And I have heard people say that theirs has been a lot easier. I don't know if I'm just super weak or if something's wrong, not wrong, but just the tolerances are a little different. But it's very hard to do that. It's kind of annoying, but whatever, it doesn't matter too much. So those are the controls, basically the same as what you're used to. And I'm not going to disassemble it here, but disassembly is basically this, once you get past that first step that I showed you, it's the same as any other polymer striker-fired 9. So some features and quirks of the gun. So this is a chassis gun, similar to the P320, but unlike the P320, there's not a huge aftermarket. The other thing is this, the original, and the A1, which is their new one that they now make as their current gun, those are not compatible, so I can't put my original chassis in an A1 frame or the other way around. But there are compact versions of this original frame. I don't know if I'd go and seek one out. I don't quite care enough to do that, but if you want to, you can do that. I already mentioned this gun comes with an upgraded A1 recoil spring. There's also an upgraded A1 firing pin spring that lightens the trigger very slightly, and you can put that in. I don't have any experience with that, however, I do actually have one on the way, and I'm gonna see how this gun fires that way. Should be just a slightly lighter trigger. Now, one quirk or feature that may be a complete deal breaker for you, and I would totally understand if it was, is if you want to use an optic on this one, if you want to get it milled for an optic, first of all, you're gonna have to deal with this, the loaded chamber indicator. But even if you get one of these that more commonly didn't have that, you have a firing pin block that protrudes here. So if I pull the trigger, see that coming up? My understanding is it's hard to get these guns milled because of that. There are also people who understandably have concerns with, I don't know, maybe some debris gets in there or something. And the gun actually won't fire if I plug that. Well, it's not. The gun will not fire if I plug that. I'm not super concerned with debris or it not firing, but if I was somebody who wanted to put an optic on this, get the A1 maybe if you're still interested in an APX, but I wouldn't recommend getting this one. I was looking, you can get it milled, I guess, maybe, but it was costing like 260 bucks. I was like, that's almost as much as the gun, no way. So if you really want an optic, look somewhere else. Maybe the A1 or maybe an entirely different gun. As I mentioned, $300 on Aimsurplus. There are a lot of parts that are compatible with the A1 and this. I'm not going to go over it all in depth. Look it up yourself if you feel the need to, because I don't want to give you wrong advice. But in my little bit of research, there are a lot of compatible parts. Magazines are compatible as well. 17 round mag here for the full size. If you get a compact, it's 15 rounds. So those will work in the A1 or the original. They're pretty cheap. I got a whole bunch for like 22 bucks. Not a whole bunch, 6, but you know. So I mentioned the chamber indicator. The A1 does not have that firing pin block, by the way. Okay, so the actual shooting experience of the gun. There's little finger grooves you can see. Now for me, my fingers don't quite fit that. You see if I get a good grip, you know, it fits a little, it doesn't quite fit my fingers. That said, it does not negatively impact my experience with the gun. It's not something where it feels uncomfortable because I can't get it to fit. So your mileage may vary. I also have fairly small hands, so if you have larger hands, those might be a bigger benefit. People tend to like finger grooves or they don't. It feels like the ergonomics feel like a slightly worse VP9. Just the way it feels in my hand. That's a good thing. The VP9 has excellent ergos. So when I say a slightly worse VP9, I mean that as a compliment. With the upgraded recoil spring, the solid ergos, and the fact that it is a full-size 9mm, plus I'm sure that light has some effect. Follow-up shots are very quick. This is not a hard gun to shoot quickly if you want to. I enjoy using it for my competition use, even though obviously this is not a competition gun, this is a duty gun. But for me, it's a nice gun to use in my amateur competition stuff because you can fire pretty quickly with it. The trigger starts off, I found very bad. Like when I got it out of the box and it was new, the trigger was not good. Put a couple hundred rounds through it, it's a little bit better. Now 2,000 rounds through it, it feels like a nice-ish for a polymer striker fired trigger. It is crisper than a Glock. It does not have the rolling break of a Glock, but it feels slightly heavier than Gen 5 triggers. Definitely better than Gen 3 or 4 though, but slightly heavier than Gen 5, a little bit crisper. Some people like the rolling break of a Glock, some people don't. It's a lot worse though than the notably nice striker fired triggers like a VP9 or a Walther. It's definitely worse than that. But, you know, it's fine. And I'm sure, as I mentioned, if you that competition firing spring, if you do like the gun but feel you want to improve your trigger slightly, that is an option for you. The little safety blade does protrude a little bit on the trigger. and it does not go all the way back when firing. I thought that might be slightly annoying over the course of a day shooting a bunch of rounds, but I didn't actually know this, so not a huge deal. Similarly, when I was dry fire practicing, my finger was kind of getting pinched underneath here. Again, I was thinking that when I went to my course, shooting a couple hundred rounds in a day, that might get me a blister or something. Never did, so it felt slightly annoying, but then it didn't actually have any sort of impact when I was shooting. So reloading and manipulation of the gun here. And normally I wouldn't make this a section, but I specifically got this gun, the original, over the A1 because of the funny looking tactical Toblerone. You can't even really call them slide serrations, but the ridges here. And what's funny is there was a full-size A1 on a really steep sale plus a rebate, so I actually could have gotten the full-size A1, the new one, for the same price as this gun. But I went with this gun specifically because of that slide, because I thought it would be really nice to rack and everything. And it is. It's probably the nicest or the easiest to rack of any firearm that I have handled. It's nice too because they're, other than the spot right here, they're literally everywhere. So you can just grab anywhere and go. That's especially nice with gloves, I find. So a lot of people don't like that because they think it's ugly. For me, it's really practical and I like that. I also think it's cool, looks cool too. So if you don't like that, but you still like this gun, again, maybe look at the A1. But if you do like that feature, cool, you have a $300 gun on Aimsurplus for you. So the other thing that I like in the reload manipulation is the metal magazines. I find metal into polymer guns a lot of times because of like the smoothness of this. I don't know, maybe I'm just bullshitting, but it feels easier to insert sometimes than a polymer mag into a polymer gun, and it feels like it, in this gun certainly, mags come out really easy, you don't gotta rip them at all, and they go in easy. So, between that and those slide serrations, if you want to call them that, reloading and manipulation is great, super easy. This is probably like one of the quickest, easiest guns to manipulate and reload for me. One thing though, that to me is a downside, is it auto forwards a lot. So what that means is if you insert a magazine and you put enough pressure on it, it'll automatically, the slide will go forward, it'll chamber around. To me, it's annoying because it doesn't happen all the time, so you can't actually rely on it. But then when you go to, I always come around from the back. Sometimes the slide isn't there, and it's a little weird. Not the end of the world, not really a big deal, but that's just something I've noticed compared to other guns. So who should buy this? It's a $300 full-size polymer 9 from a reputable manufacturer that, in my experience, is a good shooter, it's reliable, everything you can want. So, unless you want a really nice trigger, then it's only fine. It's just a great deal. So if you're looking at guns like the Glock 17 or something like that, anything in that category, take a look at this. It's probably going to be cheaper than what you're looking at, and it's also going to be new if you get the Aimsurplus one. The A1 you can look at too. I think Beretta's got a rebate going on right now. Those tend to be really cheap as well, although usually a little bit more than this. But yeah, it's a great, cheap, reliable, full-size gun. I mentioned earlier the slightly different import marks. I don't care about that, but I don't know, maybe you're somebody who likes cool, weird collectibles. There you go. That's a fun gun to get, and it's functional as well. So some reasons I would caution against getting it, potentially. Or some people. Trigger snobs, stay away. This is not a VP9. This is not a Walther. Go do those or some sort of hammer gun. Also, this being a discontinued model, Beretta isn't necessarily going to support it in the way they are the A1. You're probably not going to have a lot of aftermarket stuff. Holsters are harder to find, although as I mentioned, Black Point Tactical makes them, and they're my favorite anyways, so that's totally fine for me. But if you have a specific holster you really like, maybe they don't make those. Also, Safariland makes them as well. So So yeah, overall, I think this is a great gun. I think this is worth taking a look at if any of the things I've said intrigued you. Also, if you want an optic, stay away. You can do it technically. It's probably not worth it. But overall, if the things I've intrigued you, or I've said have intrigued you, then maybe it's worth checking out on Aimsurplus. If not, maybe look at the A1 if some of the other stuff has, or just stay away entirely. I will be carrying this more in the winter. I got another inside the waistband holster for it. Again, it's a full-size gun with an X300, and I won't carry the appendix because I don't like carrying striker guns or non-hammer guns that I can't pin the hammer on appendix. But, you know, with a thick sweater or something in winter, I live in Minnesota, it gets really cold. Might be a nice little winter gun. But, yeah, great do-it-all, duty, whatever, full-size handgun. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Apologies for rambling. That sometimes happens. And have a lovely morning, afternoon, or evening, whatever time it is for you. Bye.